One narrative in crypto that has circulated around for years is the fact that we are going to see a flippening event. What exactly does that mean? Essentially, what it means is that we will see an old coin or a project flip Bitcoin at some point in time. This becomes kind of crazy to think about when you're looking at the market cap of Bitcoin today at almost $1.8 trillion. And then the second largest asset, aka Ethereum, has only $342 billion. It also goes to show you that, if we do see a flipping event, which I do believe that we will, it's going to make that underlying asset very, very expensive. Now the question is, do we see that happen? Over time, especially in the past, XRP has come increasingly very close to flipping Bitcoin. 2017 to 2018 specifically was a very interesting time because we were at less than $100 billion away from seeing Ethereum flip Bitcoin. And prior to that, XRP was about over $140 billion away from flipping Bitcoin, and it already flipped Ethereum. Even today, a lot of people still think that XRP can't flip Ethereum, even though it did in the past. But the main thing that we're looking at here is Bitcoin and having Bitcoin flipped. Because again, the main reason, in my opinion, the reason why Bitcoin is still number one, the reason why Bitcoin has remained a top project in this space is because number one, it was the first official crypto project. Number two, it's the main driver of the crypto cycle. We know everyone has followed Bitcoin dominance forever. Bitcoin still remains a top project with, over 50+% dominance, which is why, in my opinion, Bitcoin is still in the number one spot. But my question is, what happens at some point in time when Bitcoin loses a significant amount of dominance and never gains it back? What happens when utility becomes the driver? And what happens when we no longer have to rely on Bitcoin for the crypto cycle? Because then all of the major narratives on why Bitcoin has retained that number one spot kind of get tossed out the window. And this is what gets me very excited about the future, because I do think that Bitcoin will be flipped. I do believe that there is going to be a new king crown. Now, before we dive on into everything, I just want to quickly let you guys know that Decent Wallet is having its Black Friday sale up to 40% off right now until December 3rd. If you guys do want to grab a Decent Wallet, I do have links down in description below. And even if you already own a Decent Wallet, remember, if you have crypto friends, maybe a family member that's involved in crypto, this makes for a perfect Christmas gift. So, if you guys do want to tap in right now, up to 40% off on the 2X package and up to 30% off on the single package, you guys are more than welcome to utilizing my links down in the description below. Now let's talk about how we're starting to see more and more big players coming out and talking negatively about Bitcoin. Yes, we take this with a grain of salt because it's coming from institutional players. The thing that gets me very, very interested in the Bitcoin narrative is how many institutional players and how many big names have spewed Bitcoin hype over the last roughly 3 years. BlackRock was hyping up Bitcoin for roughly 3 years now. And so many other additional players jumped on that bandwagon. And it got me thinking, why are all of these institutional players, why are all these asset management companies talking so positively about Bitcoin? Something's going on here. And I thought to myself, what if this is just one of the biggest psyops in crypto? Oh, let's get everyone on the Bitcoin train, just to have it, slow down, and maybe even derail while all of the other ones succeed. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just thinking to myself, because if we are seeing such a huge marketing campaign for Bitcoin, which we have been seeing over the last 2 years now, it just is so odd to me. It feels off. And then we get these videos. So big shot to Good Morning Crypto for this. Have Bitcoin worst nightmare is this. Ultimately, Vanek has been, was here before Bitcoin. We will walk away from Bitcoin if we feel the thesis is fundamentally broken. Very interesting headline here. Listen closely, sort of one of the fundamentals. Now there's something else going on within the Bitcoin community that kind of non-crypto people need to know about. And that is ultimately, Vanek has been around before Bitcoin. We will walk away from Bitcoin if we think the thesis is fundamentally broken. We don't right now, but you always have to look at the underlying technology. And the Bitcoin community has been asking itself about, is there enough encryption in Bitcoin? Because quantum computing is coming. And then secondly, is there enough privacy in Bitcoin? And so a lot of Bitcoin OGs or Maxis have been looking at Zcash. And Zcash, what's that? Zcash is a token. It's sort of related to Bitcoin with a lot more privacy. Because you know the kind of garbage that we got about Bitcoin 4 years ago is it's like used for all bad illicit behavior. But now everyone kind of realizes when you move money around on the Bitcoin blockchain, you can see it. You can see it move from one wallet to another. And a lot of people are looking for more privacy. Now obviously, now they're starting to push Zcash and all this, other stuff. The main thing that I'm looking at here is the narrative shift. We just go back a couple of months ago. All of these big players are talking so positively about Bitcoin. Now don't get me wrong. There's definitely a few of the, headlines or the discussions that I don't really agree with. Like for example, this one from the ECB. This got posted from Black Swan Capitalist. We do have the ECB. Says Bitcoin isn't fit for reserves. That's fine. Ripple and Stellar have been working with the IMF for years. They've been meeting with the IMF. I know Ripple was on a major initiative with them. And then we also have XRP and XLM are already building the infrastructure the world will use. And it's happening quietly, but decisively again. Very broad statement here. We have to see what happens realistically, but I am very positive about Ripple and Stellar in just the evolution of the space. But listen closely to what the ECB is saying about Bitcoin, referred to, and whether reserves of central banks should or could include Bitcoins. I think there's a view around the table of the governing council, and most likely the general council as well, that reserves have to be liquid, that reserves have to be secure, that they have to be safe, that they should not be plagued by the suspicion of money laundering or other criminal activities. And as a result, I'm confident that reserves will not enter that Bitcoins will not enter the reserves of any of the central banks of the General Council. I had a good conversation with my colleague from the Czech Republic, and I leave it to him to make whatever announcement he wants to make, but I'm confident that he's convinced, as we all are, of the necessity to have liquid, secure and safe reserves referred to. So yeah, listen, the ECB definitely has been pushing the CBDC narrative for quite some time, so it makes sense on why they would be very negative about Bitcoin. Or just they've always been saying risk about crypto and stable coins and things like that, while pushing the CBDCs. Again, the growing narrative here is that Bitcoin isn't fit for reserves. Bitcoin isn't fit for this. If the narrative shifts around Bitcoin, we will shift as well in terms like the thesis is fundamentally broken here. They will, walk away from Bitcoin. It's just interesting to see all of these big players talking like this about Bitcoin. But we never hear anything bad about other projects, or at least certain projects. Like for example, let's go back to November 17th, when Smoke Dog posted this. This goes all the way back to like the beginning of 2024. This is Franklin Templeton, talking about, how other layer ones outside of Bitcoin, Ethereum and Solana have massive potential. It's interesting because I also posted that video clip, which you guys probably already watched, where we have the CEO of Franklin Templeton, Jenny Johnson, saying like Bitcoin is the greatest distraction away from the biggest disruption that is happening to, financial services. And this is kind of in line with my thought process on like, is Bitcoin the